In sections 10.5 and 10.7, we're going to deal with formulas, and then we're going to deal with inequalities. So let's start with a formula, which is an expression in which variables are used to describe a relationship. For instance, the perimeter of an object is the distance around the object. For any polygon, we find the perimeter by finding the length of all the sides. And the perimeter for a rectangle is P equals 2 times length plus 2 times width. So you're used to finding the perimeter of a rectangle if you know the length and the width. But what if you don't know the width? How do you find the width? So if your perimeter is 52 and your length is 8, let's find the width. You would start with your formula, P equals 2L plus 2W, but then you would solve for L. So we will put P is 52 equals 2 times length, which we're given, plus 2 times W, which we don't know. So basically W is our variable and we need to solve for that variable. So 2 times 8 is 16. We're going to go ahead and write that in there. And so when we subtract 16 from both sides, we see that 36 is equal to 2W. So let's go up here. This is getting kind of messy. And when we divide both sides by 2, we get 18 equals W. So the width is going to be 18. Okay, let's look at some angles down here, and I'm going to clear out some things to make this neater. Let's review geometry from 306 a little bit. Vertical angles are angles that are across from each other when two lines intersect. So vertical angles have the same measure because they are across from each other. And so in this question it asks which angles are congruent. And congruent means they have the same measure. So angles 2 and 4 are congruent, and angles 1 and 3 are congruent. And then from our last lesson we learned that angles are supplementary if they add up to 180 degrees. We also learned that a straight line is 180 degrees, so the angles that combine to form a straight line are supplementary. That means that angles 1 and 4 are supplementary, 1 and 2 are supplementary, 2 and 3 are also, and 3 and 4 are supplementary. And then the area formulas are that area of a rectangle is length times width. The area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. And then the area of a trapezoid is 1/2 height times the small base plus the large base. I'm pretty sure you won't have the area of a trapezoid as a formula you need to have memorized on the exam. So using those formulas, let's work some problems. And what I'd like you to do is pause the video, try to work them yourself, and then join back in with the video to compare your work. I'm going to work fairly quickly, so if you have any problems, just pause the video and catch up. The longest side of a triangle is 3 feet longer than the shortest side, so we have a triangle that looks something like this. And here's one side. The longest side is going to be that side, that's the shortest side, plus 3, and the medium side is going to be the shortest side plus 1. So the perimeter of the triangle is 16 feet, and we know that the perimeter is the distance around. So we know that if we add the sides together, x plus 3 plus x plus 1 plus x, and I'll put parentheses here to represent the sides, although we don't need it to solve the equation, then this gives us the equation we need in order to solve for x. So I'm going to undo the parentheses, okay, so now we combine our like terms, and we have 3x's, and then we have 3 plus 1 is 4. Now we subtract 4 from both sides, and that gives us 12 on the left and 3x on the right. And when we divide by 3, then we get 4 on the left equals x. So we know that the shortest side is 4. Then the medium side is going to be 4 plus 1, or 5, and the largest side is going to be 4 plus 3, or 7. On the next problem, well wait, before we do that, we need to add the lengths that we found. 7 plus 5 plus 4, and make sure they equal 16, which is the perimeter that we're given, and they do, so we know our answers are correct. In the next problem, we are given the width of a rectangular pool in terms of its length, and we're given that the perimeter is 62 feet. So here's the width and here's the length, and we know the perimeter is 62 feet. We know that the width is related to the length. It's going to be the length minus 3 feet. And we know that perimeter equals 2 times length plus 2 times width. So that's going to be 2 times length plus 2 times, I'm going to use a capital L here. And all I did there was I said that width is length minus 3. So instead of W here, I have L minus 3. So now I can solve for L, and I know my perimeter is 62. So 62 equals 2L plus 2L, distributing the 2, minus 6, or 4L minus 6. So if we add 6 to both sides, we're going to come up here. Then we get 68 equals 4L, and then we have to divide both sides by 4, and that gives us 17 equals L. And we plug 17 back into our original equation for L. We also have to find the width. The width is going to be 17 minus 3 equals 14. So we plug 14 in for W, and we plug 62, which we're given, in for the perimeter. So this tells us 2 times 17, and I'm going to go ahead and write what that is. 2 times 17 is 34. 34 plus, and then 2 times 14 is 28, and that equals 62, so it checks out. The area of a triangular road sign is 70 square feet. If the base of the sign is 14 feet, what is the height of the sign? We know that the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. And we know that the base is 14. We don't know the height. We do know the area is 70 square feet. So we plug in 70 for area equals 1/2 times 14 times height. Well, 1/2 of 14 is 7, so we have 70 equals 7h, and when we divide both sides by 7, we get 10 equals h. And when we check our work, we have 1/2 times base, which is 14, times height, which is 10, should equal 70. So 1/2 times 14 is 7. 7 times 10 does equal 70, so it checks. Okay, let's do example 3. Find the measure of each angle. So in the first case, I want you to notice something. We're not finding x. I mean, we are, but that's not the answer. The answer is one angle is 10 times x plus 7, and the other answer is 7x plus 3. So when you solve for x, don't stop. Look back at your picture and see what it is they're asking for. Okay, what do we know about these angles in the first case? We know that they're supplementary, they lie on a straight line, and we know that a straight line is 180 degrees. You need to have that memorized. So if we add those angles together, we get 180. And now we can solve for x. So 10x plus 7x is 17x. 7 plus 3 is 10. Subtract 10 from both sides and we get 17x is 170. And then when we divide both sides by 17, we get x equals 10. So if x equals 10, then the first angle, we're going to substitute 10 for x, and we get 10 times 10, which is 100, plus 7 is 107. So we get 100 plus 7 equals 107. And the second angle we can find by plugging 10 in for x, and we get 7 times 10 is 70, plus 3 equals 73. So we think we've found the measure of the angles. Those would be the answers, 107 and 73. But to check our work, we're going to add those answers together, because when you add those angles together, you should get 180 degrees. And 107 plus 73 does equal 180, so it checks. In the next situation, our angles don't add up to 180 degrees, but since they're vertical angles, we know that they're equal to each other. So 3x, let me fix that. 3x plus 45 equals 7x plus 5. So if we subtract 5 from both sides, we get 3x plus 40 equals 7x, and if we subtract 3x from both sides, we get 40 equals 4x. If we divide both sides by 4, we get 10 equals x. But that doesn't tell us our answer. We then have to substitute in angle 1. I'm going to write it like this. For angle 1, it's going to be 3x plus 45, which I'm just taking from the picture. And when we substitute 10, we get 30 plus 45, or 75. And angle 2 should be 75 also. I'm going to write that in blue up here. 75 degrees. And angle 2 should also be 75 degrees. So how do we check that? Well, the way we check it is we find out if, I'm going to write angle 2 here, does 7x plus 5 equal 75? So we'd have 7 times 10, because it's x, plus 5 should equal 75. Well, 70 plus 5 does equal 75, so it checks. But notice that the answer is 75 degrees for each of those angles. It is not x equals 10. These problems are more conceptual. They're using the tools you already know how to use, but you have all variables there, but you have to choose one of those variables, or you don't choose it, you're given it, and solve for that variable. So in the first case, parameter P equals the sum of the sides, A plus B plus C, and you are supposed to find a formula for B. In other words, solve for B equals something. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and rewrite our formula. We can get B by itself if we subtract A and also C from both sides. So we have P minus A minus C equals B. And that is all there is to this problem. In problem 2, we are solving for C. This is a formula for Fahrenheit and centigrade temperatures. Fahrenheit, if you know the centigrade temperature, you can convert it to Fahrenheit using this formula. What they want you to do is show us how to do it the opposite, so that if you're given the Fahrenheit degrees, you can convert them to centigrade degrees. Okay, what we want to do is, our goal is to get C by itself. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract 32 from both sides so that we can get the C term by itself. So we have F minus 32 equals 9/5 C. And you can verify that yourself if you're not sure about it. Okay, and then remember, when we have a coefficient that's a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. We multiply both sides by the reciprocal. Also remember, we want C by itself, so we need to get rid of that fraction. So we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 5/9, which is the reciprocal of 9/5. So let's write 5/9 times the left side of the equation equals 5/9 times 9/5 C. And so on the right, you would hope that your fractions would cancel out, and they do. So on the left, well, you could actually leave it like that, or you could write it out 5/9 F minus 32 over 1 times 5/9. Getting kind of crowded. And since 9 doesn't go into 32 and they don't share any common factors, you would multiply 32 times 5 to get 160, and so you would have 5/9 F minus 160/9. But usually when you see this conversion, your answer is going to look like this: 5/9 times F minus 32. Either way would be correct. So now you solve these 3 problems and then come back to the video and see how you do. In the last problem, you have 2 angles that form a right angle, and right angles are 90 degrees. So that's why you have the first angle plus the second angle equal 90 degrees. And when you solve for x, you get x equals 11, but that's not your answer. You have to plug that x back in for each angle. 4 times 11 equals 44, and when you plug 11 in here, you get 46. Now we're going to start working on 10.7, which has to do with inequalities. It is very important you memorize these signs if you don't already know them. The less than sign points to the left, the greater than sign points to the right, the less than or equal to looks like that with a little line under it. Very important that you know that. And then the not equal to sign is the equal sign with a slash under it. So if you're comparing 4 and 10, your sign would point to the smaller one. In other words, the smaller part of the arrow points to the smaller number. So 4 is less than 10 is how you would read that inequality. This is the end of part 1 of this lesson. Go ahead and move on to part 2.